You can call it a game, but I call it escape. Building generals to stomp your face like Scipio,
Hey everybody, welcome to EvonyBites. If this is your first time, good to see you. Jump in, hope you like it. It's kind of an unusual style. If you're returning, thank you very much. If you guys don't mind, go ahead and hit the like button down there, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. This is the first time I've ever said this, but we've got enough videos out there and having enough fun. I'm getting enough feedback that it's worth getting a little activity going, I think, for people even know, look, I'm not a professional video or YouTuber. That's not what I'm after in doing this. I'm just a gamer. I like Evony, so my videos kind of suck, and I'm not really trying to make great videos. And I'm not going to market or do anything wild like that. I just want to get the data out there, and I like the nerd flow. So support me by supporting the channel and sharing some stuff and following. All right, guys, here's what we're going to get into tonight. I've had some questions on March presets, or just March in general. But I think to have a March, we've got to get into March presets, because if you're going to have a March, proper March, you're going to have a March preset. Now I'm going to sort of stay away from my Archer March, because we've gone over this in a video where I do range / siege. I mix my range and my siege, and I don't want that to confuse you. So let's just look at a different type of March, which we'll look at ground here. So what do you want to do? Now, that's a good question. Now, I'm not going to tell you to emulate what I'm doing in my March here, because this is so dependent on where you're at, what numbers you have, what your power is, and I'll sort of brush across that. More importantly, what you want to represent is this picture, if you will, this window. And that's not it. Hang on, my March preset got zeroed out. Well, hope to God I still have one left. Well, I don't. And this happens. This happens when you put on a March buff and then you jack with your presets or save or do something weird. When you've got March buffs on, it'll completely jack up your preset. But that's not relevant, because we can still see what I'm talking about here, and I'll just fix this one in front of you guys. So let's go back to ground. So what we want to do is sort of emulate this situation. And this situation is having every troop represented, and it's a pain in the booty, to be honest with you, to go in and build these. It really does suck. And I hate doing it. What is this? Is this my ground march? This thing is funk. What happened with the funk? Okay, I'm fine with all that. I don't know what's going on with this siege right here. Alright, you want to have every single type and tier represented. Now I'm choosing to go 1000. There's a few reasons for that. I just think it's a nice optimal number for most people to use in a ratio that matches your average march size, right? So I don't want to get too many layers, small layers down in here, and then deplete myself of high troops up here at the top. But I want maximum layered troops in there. So to me, generally that falls at 1,000. Some people might run 5,000 or something in between, and I think all that's fine. It's kind of based on where you're at and what ratio you have. At first, when starting out on a new server, often I'll run 50 or 100 or 200 or 250 of each of these layers, and that's fine as well. You just want to represent them as you grow, leaving yourself enough room to pack out your top tier to do the heavy fighting, while these layers here do your rounding. And that's what we're going to get into right here. What is your rounding? And you can see I'm going in and I'm putting 1,000 on literally every single type and layer. This is something that, if you're very accustomed to doing bosses, is going to seem foreign, crazy, and backwards. And that's because it is from bosses. In bosses, there aren't rounds. The whole thing happens, I'm not going to get off on this too far, but the whole thing happens in one single round in bosses. So it's like hit, everybody smashes into each other, who comes out alive? That's why results are so weird, and troops that you use are so weird, and how it plays out is so weird between player versus player and bosses, because it's one single round. This adds to why cavalry are so effective in doing bosses. Not the only reason, but adds to why is because it's just one round, and cavalry gets in there, runs through the entire enemy super fast, doesn't take that much damage, and hits on the other side, and the round's over. There's not enough time to repeat that, in which case the horses would see much higher attrition. They don't in the single round. They get through pretty well because their HP and defense holds up all right for the single round. So cav do really well. But in player versus player, there should not be, nor is there really ever, hardly ever, a single round. There are many rounds, and there's a few things that determine these rounds. Overall, the master determination is how long do people make it? Who's still standing at the end? How many rounds do you have to repeat until someone is no longer standing and their HP and or defense is out? That determines when the rounds stop. But as far as how many rounds do you get granted to your side in the battle, well, let me finish here. Almost done. I know, cliffhanger. Sucks building these. Don't ever go jacking around with your presets. Okay. Got all the stupid little layers done. I know, cliffhanger still. But I gotta finish this because I'm lazy and I won't later. Alright. Okay. So how does it work? So how do you gain rounds? Blah, blah, blah. Well, the way that you gain rounds in a singular battle, and I'm going to use the term singular battle because this is where Evony gets really weird, and everyone who knows the game well dissects it mechanically, sort of has to guesstimate on this and figure it out for themselves. And I think we all just generally agree with nuanced differences, but someone will probably absolutely disagree, and I can't wait to see you in comments. I usually do. But someone will probably majorly disagree, but here's the deal. You are granted battle rounds. What I mean by that is one singular battle where you and an opponent meet each other. You get a round in which you get to attack and initiate, if you will, an attack on the enemy match, whether they be attacking you or you attacking them. It doesn't matter when you're in battle. So many times that you get to attack them, and your turn is determined first by type. So type of troop, so archer. So if you have an archer in the battle, you get one round in which you get to attack assigned to you in that singular battle. If you have archers in ground, now you get 2 rounds assigned to you in which you get to attack. 2 full rounds in which both your archers and your ground get to attack. If you have a third cavalry, now you get 3. Throw in siege, now you get 4. So if you have all archers, cavalry, ground, and siege in a march, you now are granted 4 rounds in which you get to initiate attacks on the enemy. Okay, not just sit and defend where they get to hit you, but you get to hit them and attack back where your troops are fighting as well. So by sending one of each type of troop, which we've covered here just in the T14, you've now given yourself 4 rounds. Okay, well, if you come in on, go back to my ground. If you come in with a tier, you've now added yourself another round. So if I were to send, if I were to send only T14 ground right here, okay, I would be granted 1 round in which I get to attack. Let's take that down. If I were to send a little bit of ground, a little bit of archer, a little bit of siege, and, well, I don't have cavalry T14. Okay, and a little T13 cavalry. Well, I'm now granted 4 rounds because I have 4 types of troops there. Now, I have T14 tier and T13 tier cavalry. I'm going to get a round for each tier. So I get a round for cavalry T13 and a round for using T14. Just 1 round for using T14 troops. So I now have a total of 6 rounds in which I get to attack in this wave right here. So you've seen people do this. We've all seen it. You're probably this guy, a few of you. But a lot of people will just junk in a bunch of troops like that. Like, hey, I'll just represent a couple 100,000 of each one of them, and I'll just overwhelm them because I got all the troops in there. Well, that don't work for attack, brother or sister. But if that wave does come in, or if you do choose to use it, you're getting 6 rounds in which you get to attack the enemy. 6 because there are 4 different types of troops here and 2 different types of tier. 4 plus 2 equals 6. So if we go in and we now hit the preset, and granted I don't have T14 cav, so we take that out of the mix. But if we were to go 4 types of troops, ground, archers, siege, and cav, and I have all 4 of those types of troops represented, I'm getting 4 waves. But I'm getting 4 waves times every single tier that I have there. Right? So now T13 times all of the types of troops that are there, T12, T11, T10, and on down, and T14, I get a round for each one of those. So I'm getting 14 rounds for the tier that I'm now sending. 14 and 4. So I've stacked up the maximum amount of rounds that I can possibly use in attacking the enemy. So why do I have 1,000 of each one here? That is to now represent that tier and that type. Okay, so for each troop type and each tier, you've got a round in which you get to attack. So I put 1,000 troops in, and the reason I have 1,000 or multiple, not just one, is because there's multiple rounds. So if you have one layer in there, say I have one T10, one T9, one T8, well, it's going to go through the first round, and it will give me those rounds for that the first wave of rounds. It will give me that battle, but let's say I go through just literally one round and the one troop dies, the one T10, the one T9, the one T8 dies in that first round. Well, then it's kind of irrelevant, because in the second round I lose it anyway. So as I go through the first, second, third, fourth, fifth round, I'm just steadily dropping rounds, and every consecutive round I have far less rounds in which I get to attack, because they're dropping off like flies. So instead you want to represent them in a higher ratio: 100, 250, 500, 1,000, 1,500, 5,000. Represent them so that they make it through those consecutive rounds, so that when round wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hits, you still have layers to repeat wave 13, wave 14, wave 15, and so on, and still have the layers, still granting yourself more and more rounds. Now, when I say a singular battle, what I mean by that is if the battle plays out, everybody's rounds are used out, well, then it starts all over again. Now, generally that doesn't happen in fully layered battles. Somebody's getting stomped, or, you know, somebody's winning and somebody's getting stomped in that scenario. But if not, it resets again based on however many tiers or layers you have left through that first battle set of rounds. However many rounds the two of you have, you play them out. And those rounds are based on types of tier and troops. Now, it could be argued, since this isn't stated anywhere, that also there is a set number of rounds that each person is granted no matter what. Now, that makes a lot of sense for at least one round, because if someone attacks you and you're defending, well, defense gets bonus, defense gets to attack first. How do you attack if you don't, I mean, I guess because you have troops there, but I mean, essentially you're granted some sort of bonus round, and it could be debated that there's already a base one in there besides troops and tier, but that's impossible to prove, because to even get in a battle, you have to have a type of troop and a tier, therefore granting you a round. So that's kind of, in my mind, impossible to come to sorts with, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't tell us how many rounds are exactly happening inside of these battles, or singular battles, or multiple battles back to back. It doesn't really give us a final number. The only thing that you can figure out is that each tier and each type of troop is giving you a round in which you can attack, and you don't want to have less than your enemy. Obviously, if your maximum troop is T11 and theirs is T14, they're going to gain more rounds than you can, because they're going to be able to add multiple sets of tiers and types on top of yours. But given that you're both the same tier, you at least want to match, or possibly it'd be great if you beat the amount of rounds that you have in which to attack them by having more tiers and more types represented. So that's layering, and to me, that's how that plays out. And it does the same thing for ground, it does the same thing for siege, it does the same thing for cavalry, it does the same thing for archers. Now, caveat to that for me on archers is that I do send siege with it, but that's not necessarily screwing up the concept or idea of layering. That's just adding a little bit of a complexity on top of that. And apparently I've completely lost my game, and this is exactly why EvonyBites. You guys have any questions or comments or anything to say at all, go ahead and put it down on the bottom. I'm going to cut this video off on the fact that EvonyBites out.